The warning sirens screamed through Station Kepler 7 at 3 in the morning. Jake Mitchell was mopping the east corridor when the lights shifted from white to emergency red. His coffee went cold in his hand as the station-wide announcement crackled to life. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jake had worked sanitation on Kepler 7 for 3 years now, and he'd never heard that tone in Administrator Brooks' voice before. Fear. Real fear. The station shuddered as something massive docked at Bay 12. Through the corridor windows, Jake could see the alien warship, and it looked like it had been through hell. Burn marks scarred the hull. Entire sections were ripped open. Coolant leaked into space like blood in water. The ship bore the markings of the Ralkati Empire, one of the galaxy's most feared warrior races. If something had done this to them, what chance did a civilian station have? Jake grabbed his cleaning cart and wheeled it toward the maintenance closets. He knew nobody would notice him. Nobody ever did. 3 years of pushing mops and emptying trash bins had taught him that invisible was just another word for safe. The accident on Mars had made sure of that. Mining engineer to janitor. From someone to no one. That's what happens when you're the only survivor and the psych evaluators decide you're too broken to be trusted with anything important anymore. The docking bay opened and Ralkati warriors poured out. These weren't the proud, towering figures you saw in recruitment holos. These were soldiers who'd seen something that shook them to their core. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Rourke, went straight to the command center. Jake followed at a distance, pushing his cart, just another piece of station furniture. The emergency council assembled in 20 minutes. Jake found himself mopping the council chamber floor while representatives from 6 different species argued in the center of the room. The Ralkati commander stood at the head of the table, and even through his armor, you could see the tension in his shoulders. "We found something in the Veros sector," Rourke said, his translator rendering his growls into flat, emotionless English. "Something that should not exist. A tear in space. A wound in reality itself. And something came through." He activated the holographic display. The image showed a creature that made Jake's blood run cold. 30 feet of writhing darkness, covered in plates of black armor that seemed to absorb light. Too many eyes. Too many limbs. Angles that didn't make sense to human eyes. It looked like someone had taken nightmares from 6 different species and welded them together. 12 of my warriors died trying to contain it, Rourke continued. 12 of the finest soldiers in the Empire. It adapts to every weapon we use. Energy weapons feed it. Kinetic rounds bounce off. Chemical agents make it stronger. We barely managed to trap it in a cargo container before escaping. And you brought it here? Administrator Brooks looked like he wanted to climb through the viewscreen. To a civilian station. Our ship was dying, Rourke said simply. We had no choice. The containment will not hold forever. We transferred it to your abandoned cargo Bay 7. The one you use for storage. Jake's mop stopped moving. Bay 7. That was part of his route. The old hydroponics section they'd shut down 5 years ago after the expansion. He'd been in there just last week, cleaning out old equipment. The council erupted into arguments. The Coronid Trade Minister wanted the creature ejected into space immediately. The Velian scientist wanted to study it. The human representatives wanted it as far from the civilian sections as possible. Everyone had an opinion, and none of them were good. Dr. Emily Shaw, the station's head xenobiologist, pulled up more data. From what I'm seeing, conventional military response is useless. Every time you attack it, it learns. It evolves. It's like it's reading your intentions and adapting in real time. Then what do you suggest? Brooks asked. I don't know, Shaw admitted. But I know we have 48 hours before that containment fails. After that, this creature will be loose on a station with 14,000 civilians. 48 hours to solve a problem that killed 12 trained warriors. Jake kept mopping, kept listening, kept being invisible. The council argued for another hour before adjourning. They'd reconvene at 0800 with proposals. Nobody had any good ideas. As they filed out, Jake finished cleaning and headed for the storage closets. Bay 7 was 3 levels down, in the forgotten sections of the station where only maintenance crews went. He told himself he wasn't going to look. Told himself it wasn't his business. Told himself to stay invisible, stay safe, stay small. But 3 years of being nobody had taught him something else too. When you've got nothing left to lose, invisible starts looking a lot like free. Jake's shift the next day took him through the lower decks. He told himself he was just doing his job. The maintenance corridors needed cleaning. The fact that they happened to pass by Bay 7 was just coincidence. That's what he kept telling himself, anyway. The security presence around the bay was intense. 4 armed drones hovered near the entrance, their plasma rifles tracking any movement. 2 Ralkati guards stood at attention, their weapons drawn. They didn't even glance at Jake as he mopped past them. Janitors were part of the scenery. Background noise. Invisible. There was a reinforced observation window set into the wall, probably installed back when Bay 7 was actually used for something. Jake positioned his cart nearby and started cleaning the window. Slowly. Very slowly. Nobody questioned it. Cleaning windows was what janitors did. Through the thick glass, he could see into the bay. The creature sat in the far corner, pressed against the wall. From here, it looked even more massive than in the holos. Its armor plates shifted and rippled like liquid metal. Those eyes, dozens of them across its body, glowed with an eerie blue light. Every few seconds, it would release a sound, a low vibration that Jake could feel through the floor. Not quite a growl. More like a whale song played through broken speakers. The guards were watching it like hawks. Their weapons never wavered. They saw a monster. A threat. Something that killed their brothers in arms. Jake understood that. He did. But as he stood there, pretending to clean the same spot over and over, he saw something else. The way the creature held itself. Curled inward. Defensive. It wasn't pacing. Wasn't testing the walls. Wasn't acting like a predator waiting to strike. It was hiding. And every time one of the drones moved, every time a guard shifted position, every time a sound echoed through the bay, it flinched. Just a little. Just enough. Jake knew that posture. He'd seen it in the mirror every day for 2 years after Mars. That was the shape fear made when it had nowhere left to go. His lunch break came at noon. Jake sat in the small maintenance office on level 3, staring at the sandwich in his hands. Turkey and cheese, 2 days old, from the commissary. He wasn't hungry. Hadn't been hungry in a long time. Food was just fuel now. Something you consume to keep the machine running. The sandwich sat there, and Jake thought about the creature 3 floors down. When was the last time it ate? Did it even need to eat? The Ralkati hadn't mentioned feeding it. They probably figured it didn't matter. 48 hours and it would be gone, one way or another. Jake made a decision that he knew was incredibly stupid. The kind of stupid that got people killed. But 3 years of being invisible had built up something inside him. A pressure. A need to be seen by someone, something, anything. Even if that something was a dimensional horror that could kill him in half a second. He pocketed the sandwich and headed back down to Bay 7. The guards were on shift rotation, new faces he didn't recognize. The drones were still there, tireless and patient. Jake pushed his cart past them again, just another meaningless part of their day. There was a maintenance hatch about 30 feet down the corridor. Jake knew every maintenance hatch on the station. You had to, in his job. This one connected to the old ventilation system, back when Bay 7 actually circulated air. It probably still worked. His janitor credentials gave him access to places even security couldn't go. Nobody worried about janitors sneaking anywhere. What were they going to do, steal the trash? Jake waited until the guards were focused on their screens, until the drones completed their patrol sweep and rotated away. Then he slipped into the hatch. The ventilation shaft was cramped and dark. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as he crawled through, following the path he'd memorized from the station schematics. His breath came fast and shallow. For a moment, he was back in the collapsed mine on Mars, trapped in the dark, listening to the screams on the radio growing weaker and weaker. He stopped, pressed his forehead against the cold metal, and forced himself to breathe. In. Out. In. Out. Not there. Here. Now. The shaft opened into Bay 7 near the floor level, hidden behind some old storage crates. Jake pushed the grate open slowly, inch by inch, trying not to make any sound. He squeezed through and crouched behind the crates. The creature was 20 feet away. This close, it was even more massive than he'd imagined. Each of its armor plates was the size of Jake's torso. The eyes were everywhere, and now that he was inside, he could see they weren't just glowing. They were watching. Tracking. Intelligent. The creature's head swiveled toward him. Every eye focused on his position. That sound came again, louder now, vibrating through Jake's bones. It was a warning. A threat display. Back off or die. Jake's hands shook as he pulled the sandwich from his pocket. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But he'd come this far. He'd made his stupid decision. Might as well see it through. He tore off a piece of the bread and turkey. His arm felt like lead as he raised it. Then, gently, he tossed the food onto the floor between them. It landed with a soft sound, and the creature's eyes snapped to it. Jake didn't move closer. Instead, he backed up slowly until he reached the wall. Then he sat down, cross-legged, hands visible in his lap. Non-threatening. He'd read somewhere that sitting made you look smaller, less aggressive. He hoped that worked across species. Across dimensions. The creature stared at him. Jake stared back. His mouth was dry. His heart felt like it might explode. But he sat there, trying to project calm he absolutely did not feel. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Jake's legs went numb. His back ached. But he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just sat there, breathing, existing in the same space as something that could end him without effort. Then the creature moved. Slow. Careful. One of its limbs extended, longer than Jake expected, reaching across the distance. The appendage was surprisingly delicate at the end, almost like fingers. It touched the piece of sandwich, lifted it, brought it closer. It didn't eat. Just held it. Examining it. Those eyes shifted between the food and Jake, back and forth, like it was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Jake felt something break open in his chest. Not fear anymore. Something else. Something that felt almost like hope. Yeah, he whispered. I know. Nothing makes sense anymore, does it? The creature tilted its head, and for just a moment, Jake could swear it understood. Jake went back the next day. And the day after that. Each time, he brought food from his locker. An apple. Some crackers. A protein bar. Nothing fancy. Just whatever he had. He'd slip through the maintenance hatch during his lunch break, squeeze past the storage crates, and sit down against the wall. The creature was always in the same corner. Waiting. Those eyes would find him immediately, track his every movement until he sat down. Then, slowly, it would relax. The armor plates would stop rippling quite so much. The low humming sound it made would shift to a different frequency. Softer, somehow. Jake never tried to get closer. He'd toss the food about halfway between them, then settle in and eat his own lunch. And he'd talk. Quietly. About nothing important. Coffee machine's broken again on level 6, he said on the third day, biting into a tasteless sandwich. Been broken for 2 weeks now. Filed 5 maintenance requests. Nobody cares about the lower levels. We're not important enough, I guess. The creature watched him. Listened. Jake felt ridiculous talking to something that probably didn't understand a word. But the silence felt worse. Silence gave his thoughts too much room to wander back to Mars, back to the dark, back to the voices on the radio going quiet one by one. You know what the worst part is? Jake continued, surprising himself. It's not being here. It's not the job. It's knowing I used to be someone. Used to design tunnel systems. Used to solve problems. Now I push a mop and people look right through me. The creature's head tilted slightly. Those eyes blinked in sequence, like a wave moving across its body. Then it reached out with that careful appendage and picked up the cracker Jake had tossed. This time, it brought the food closer to what might have been a mouth. An opening appeared in the armor, and the cracker disappeared inside. Jake felt his chest tighten. Yeah, he said softly. I'm still here too. Still trying. By the 5th day, Jake had developed a routine. The creature seemed to expect him now. When he crawled through the hatch, it would shift position slightly, making room in its space. An invitation, maybe. Or just acknowledging his presence. Jake wasn't sure which, but it felt like progress. Then the alarms went off. Jake was halfway through telling a story about Dusty, his cleaning bot, when red lights flooded the bay. The creature reacted instantly, armor plates flaring out, eyes blazing bright. That sound came again, the threatening one, vibrating through the floor. But it wasn't looking at Jake. It was focused on the main door. Security burst in. 6 guards, weapons raised. Behind them came Dr. Emily Shaw and 2 other scientists, carrying scanning equipment. And behind them, looking absolutely furious, was Administrator Brooks. Mitchell. Brooks's voice echoed through the bay. What the hell do you think you're doing? Jake stood up slowly, hands visible. The creature shifted, placing itself between Jake and the armed guards. Protecting him. The realization hit Jake like a physical force. Sir, I can explain, Jake started, but Brooks cut him off. Cameras, Mitchell. There are cameras everywhere. We've been watching you risk your life for 5 days straight. Brooks looked like he wanted to strangle someone. Do you have any idea what that thing is capable of? It's scared, Jake said simply. The words came out before he could stop them. Everyone keeps calling it a monster, but it's just scared. Scared. Commander Rourke appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 more warriors. That thing killed 12 of my people. 12 warriors with decades of combat experience. And you think it's scared? Yes, Jake said, and his voice was steadier than he expected. I know what scared looks like. I lived it. After Mars, after the collapse, I was so scared I couldn't even hold a wrench without shaking. Everyone saw broken. Dangerous. Unreliable. Nobody saw scared. The room went quiet. Dr. Shaw moved forward slowly, her scanner active. Administrator Brooks, look at these readings. The creature's stress hormones have dropped 40% over the last 5 days. Neural activity shows patterns consistent with reduced anxiety. Jake's actually making contact. Making contact. Rourke's translator couldn't quite capture his tone, but the disbelief came through. His feeding it table scraps. His communicating, Shaw corrected. Without weapons. Without threats. His doing what none of us thought to try. Brooks rubbed his face, looking exhausted. Mitchell, do you understand what you've done? You've violated about 16 safety protocols. You've put yourself in danger. He's made more progress in 5 days than we've made in 2 weeks, Shaw interrupted. She looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. I've been studying the footage. The creature responds to him. Not just tolerates him. Actually responds. It's learning his patterns, his rhythms. That's sophisticated social behavior. Or it's playing with its food, Rourke growled. No, Shaw said firmly. Look at the body language. It's protective. When we entered just now, it moved between us and Jake. That's not predator behavior. That's trust. Jake glanced back at the creature. It was still tense, still watching the armed guards with those glowing eyes. But one appendage remained extended toward Jake, like an anchor point. Like it was making sure he was still there. Can I make a suggestion? Jake asked, and everyone turned to stare at him. Janitors didn't make suggestions at command meetings. Maybe try not pointing guns at it. That might help with the whole scared thing. Rourke looked ready to argue, but Shaw nodded slowly. He's right. Every interaction we've had has been hostile. We approached it as an enemy. Jake approached it as... She paused, searching for the word. As something that needed a friend, Jake finished quietly. Brooks sighed. This is insane. Completely insane. He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he pointed at Jake. You continue, but under supervision. Dr. Shaw, I want every scientist on this station studying those recordings. If there's even a chance that Mitchell's approach works, we need to understand it. Because in 36 hours, that containment was supposed to be jettisoned into space. And now? Shaw asked. Brooks looked at the creature, at Jake, at the impossible situation he'd been handed. Now we see if a janitor can teach us something about first contact. God help us all. As the group filed out, Shaw paused beside Jake. Why did you do it? She asked. Really? Jake thought about that. About 3 years of being invisible. About the weight of being broken. About sitting in the dark on Mars, knowing nobody was coming. Because nobody else did, he said finally. And I know what that feels like. 2 weeks changed everything. Bay 7 transformed from a containment cell into something that looked more like a laboratory crossed with a therapy room. Dr. Shaw's team installed equipment everywhere. Neural scanners. Audio analyzers. Atmospheric sensors. Cameras capturing every angle. But they did it slowly, carefully, always letting the creature see what they were doing. And they kept their weapons holstered. Jake came every day during lunch. The creature, which he'd started calling Dante in his head, now moved to the center of the bay when Jake arrived. Not hiding anymore. Not pressed against the wall like it expected an attack. It would settle down, that massive body folding in on itself in ways that still hurt Jake's eyes to watch, and wait. So I was thinking, Jake said on day 9, unwrapping a granola bar. You need a better name than the creature. They keep calling you that in reports. The creature did this. The creature did that. It's disrespectful, you know? Dante's eyes focused on him. The color had changed over the past week. Less harsh blue, more of a soft violet. Shaw said that indicated emotional state. Jake just knew it looked less threatening. What do you think about Dante? After this old poet guy who wrote about hell. Seems fitting. You fell through some kind of hell to get here, right? The creature made a sound. Not the threatening vibration from before. This was different. Higher pitched. Almost musical. The translation equipment that Shaw's team had set up started displaying wavelength patterns, but no words yet. They were still working on that part. Shaw entered the bay without guards now. Just her and 2 assistants, carrying tablets full of data. She'd been spending almost as much time here as Jake. "Good morning, Dante," she said, and Jake noticed she'd picked up the name. "How are we feeling today?" The creature responded with another sound. Shaw's equipment lit up, processing. "We're getting closer," she said, excitement creeping into her voice. The vocalizations have consistent patterns. Repeated phonemes in response to specific stimuli. It's definitely language, just unlike anything in our databases. "Maybe because it's not from our databases," Jake offered. "Different dimension, different everything, right?" "Exactly." Shaw pulled up holographic displays. "Look at this. We've been mapping Dante's neural responses during your conversations. There are clear reaction patterns when you speak. Not just sound recognition. Comprehension patterns. Dante understands context, emotion, intent." Jake looked at Dante. "You've been understanding me this whole time, haven't you?" The creature shifted. One appendage extended, touched the floor where Jake usually sat today. Then touched the spot where Jake would place the food. Then gestured toward Jake himself. Past. Present. Future. A sequence. A pattern. "It's showing routine," one of Shaw's assistants breathed. "It understands daily patterns. Time-based expectations. It understands friendship," Jake said quietly. Shaw was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled up another display. "Jake, I need to show you something. We've been analyzing Dante's biochemistry from the atmospheric samples. The stress hormones, the neural activity, all of it tells a story." She took a breath. "Dante isn't aggressive by nature. Everything we're seeing suggests a trauma response." "Trauma?" Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Look at the readings from when the Ralkati first encountered Dante. Adrenaline equivalent off the charts. Pain receptors firing constantly. Disorientation markers. Dante was in agony, Jake. Physical agony. This dimension, our reality, it hurts. The light spectrum is wrong. Gravity is wrong. Sound frequencies are wrong. Imagine everything you sense being painful. Every sight, every sound, every sensation." Jake thought about the mind collapse. The way the darkness had pressed in. The way his own breathing had sounded too loud in the silence. 4 days of sensory hell, wondering if every breath would be his last. "And then armed soldiers showed up," he said slowly. "Exactly." Dante lashed out from pain and terror, not malice. The Ralkati saw a monster. Dante saw attackers causing more pain. It was self-defense all the way down. The creature made another sound. Longer this time. More complex. The translation equipment struggled, then suddenly text appeared on Shaw's tablet. Broken. Fragmented. But readable. "Hurt. Hurt. Wrong. All wrong. Hurt." The bay went silent. Shaw's hands were shaking as she stared at the screen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "We did it. We actually did it." Jake stood up and moved closer to Dante. Slowly. Telegraphing every movement. "It hurts?" he asked. "Being here hurts." More text appeared. Light. Cuts. Sound. Breaks. Gravity. Crushes. Or. Wrong. Or. Hurt. "But it's getting better?" Jake pressed. "When I'm here." Small. Steady. Soft. The words came faster now. Not. Hurt. Small. Steady. Brings. Quiet. Brings. Still. Jake felt his throat tighten. "I'm Jake," he said. "That's my name. Jake. Jake." The word appeared instantly. Jake. Brings. Peace. Jake. Sees. Sees what? Fear. Jake. Sees. Fear. Not. Sees. Monster. Sees. Fear. Shaw was recording everything, her face pale. "It knew," she said. "This whole time, it knew we were afraid. It knew we saw it as a threat. But you." She looked at Jake. "You saw something else." Jake thought about the psych evaluations after Mars. The way the doctors had seen broken parts instead of a whole person. The way his co-workers had started treating him like glass, like he might shatter any moment. The way he'd become invisible because nobody wanted to see what he'd become. "I saw me," Jake said simply. "I saw someone trapped in a reality that shouldn't exist. Someone who everyone feared because they didn't understand. Someone who was in pain and nobody noticed because they were too busy protecting themselves." "Home," Dante's text read. "Want. Home. Cannot. Find. Cannot. Go." The dimensional rift closed, Shaw said softly. "Our readings showed it sealed moments after Dante came through. There's no way back. Trapped. Alone. Lost. Pain." Jake sat down, and Dante lowered itself to match his height. They were eye to eye now. Dozens of eyes to two, but somehow it felt equal. "I can't fix the pain," Jake said honestly. "I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy with a mop. But you're not alone. Not anymore. And lost." He smiled sadly. "Yeah, I know that one too. But maybe lost together is better than lost alone." Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then text filled the screen. "Jake. Gives. Food. Gives. Time. Gives. Seeing. Jake. Gives. Worth. Dante. Gives. Thank. You named yourself," Shaw whispered. "You heard Jake call you Dante and you accepted it." Dante. Yes. Dante. Was. Nothing. Now. Dante. Thanks. Jake. Jake felt something break inside his chest. The same thing that had been frozen since Mars. Since the collapse. Since he'd become invisible. "You're welcome," he said, and his voice cracked. "You're welcome, Dante." Outside the bay, word was spreading through the station. The creature could communicate. The creature had a name. The creature wasn't a threat. But Jake barely noticed. He sat with his friend, sharing a protein bar in comfortable silence, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel broken. He felt seen. The council chamber was packed. Jake had never seen so many people crammed into one space. Representatives from every species on the station. Military officials. Scientists. Civilians who'd heard the rumors and demanded answers. And in the center of it all, displayed on a dozen screens, footage of Dante and the translated conversations. Jake stood near the back, trying to be invisible again. Old habits. But Administrator Brooks had specifically requested his presence. Demanded it, actually. Jake's hands were sweating. Public speaking had never been his thing, and addressing a council of alien dignitaries definitely wasn't in his job description. Commander Rourke stood at the podium, his massive frame dominating the space. "I have reviewed the evidence," he said, his translator rendering his words flat and cold. "The creature can communicate. This changes nothing. 12 of my warriors are dead. 12 families mourn. Justice demands action." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodding in agreement. Others looking uncertain. Dr. Shaw stepped forward, her tablet glowing with data. "With respect, Commander, justice requires understanding. We now know Dante was experiencing constant physical agony. Everything about our dimension causes pain. Your warriors attacked something that was already in torment. It defended itself." "My warriors followed protocol," Rourke shot back. "They encountered a hostile entity and responded appropriately. The creature's pain does not absolve it of killing." "Doesn't it?" The voice came from the civilian section. An older woman, human, wearing a teacher's uniform. "If someone's drowning and they pull you under in panic, are they murderers? Or are they just trying to survive?" The council erupted. Arguments flew back and forth. Some demanded Dante be jettisoned immediately. Others wanted it studied. A Velian merchant suggested selling it to a research facility. Through it all, Jake stood silent, watching Dante on the screens. Watching those violet eyes that had learned to see him as friend, not threat. Brooks raised his hand for silence. "We have 48 hours of discussion behind us and no consensus ahead. The containment modifications are holding, but they won't hold forever. We need a decision." He turned, scanning the crowd until his eyes found Jake. "Mitchell. You've spent more time with Dante than anyone. You have something to say?" Every eye in the chamber turned toward Jake. His mouth went dry. His hands started shaking. For a moment, he was back in the psych evaluation room on Mars, with 3 doctors staring at him, deciding his future, deciding his worth. Broken, they'd written in their reports. Unstable. High risk. But then he thought about Dante, alone in Bay 7, waiting for lunch. Waiting for company. Waiting for someone who saw more than a monster. Jake walked to the front. Each step felt like moving through mud. But he made it to the podium and gripped the edges to keep his hands steady. "I'm not good at speeches," he started. His voice sounded small in the large chamber. "I'm a janitor. I push a mop. Most days, people don't even notice I'm there. I'm part of the furniture. Background noise." He took a breath. 3 years ago, I was a mining engineer on Mars. Good at my job. Had friends. Had a future. Then there was an accident. Tunnel collapse. I was trapped in the dark for 4 days while my crew died around me. When they finally pulled me out, I was the only survivor. The chamber was silent now. Even Rourke had stopped moving. The psych evaluators looked at me and saw broken. Saw damaged. Saw someone who couldn't be trusted with important work anymore. So they gave me a mop and sent me somewhere I couldn't hurt anyone. Somewhere I could be invisible. Jake's voice got stronger. "You know what that feels like? To have everyone see the worst parts of you and nothing else? To be defined by your trauma instead of your humanity." He pulled up footage on the main screen. Dante in the corner, pressed against the wall, flinching at every sound. That's what I saw when I looked at Dante. Not a monster. Not a killer. Someone trapped in a nightmare, and everyone around them making it worse because they were too scared to see past their own fear. "Your warriors died," Jake said, looking directly at Rourke. "I'm not saying that doesn't matter. It matters. But they died because nobody stopped to ask why Dante was attacking. They saw a threat and responded with violence. Dante saw attackers causing more pain and responded with violence. It was fear meeting fear, and fear only knows one language." Jake pulled up another image. Him and Dante, sitting across from each other, sharing food. "I didn't bring weapons. I brought bread. I didn't bring protocols. I brought time. I didn't see a monster. I saw someone who needed what I needed 3 years ago and never got. Someone to notice. Someone to care. Someone to see past the broken parts." A coronet counselor raised a tentacle. "You risked your life on sentiment. What if you had been wrong? What if the creature had killed you?" "Then I'd be dead," Jake said simply. "But I wasn't wrong. Dante didn't want to hurt anyone. Dante wanted the pain to stop. And you know what? That's not monster behavior. That's the most human thing I've ever seen." "Dante is not human," Rourke said quietly. "No," Jake agreed. "But pain is universal. Fear is universal. And apparently, kindness works across dimensions." Dr. Shaw stepped forward. "We've made significant progress in environmental modifications. Adjusting light frequencies, sound dampening, gravity compensation in Dante's section. The pain is decreasing. And Dante has offered something in return." She pulled up equations that made Jake's head hurt. Knowledge about dimensional barriers. Physics we don't understand. Technology centuries ahead of ours. All of it freely given. "In exchange for what?" the Velian merchant asked suspiciously. More text appeared on screen. Dante's words from that morning. "Exchange. Nothing. Give. Because. Given. To. Dante. Sees. Jake. Give. Freely. Dante. Gives. Freely. This. Is. Friendship." The chamber went quiet. Jake watched the council members looking at each other, at the screens, at him. He could see the moment some of them shifted. Not all. But some. Brooks stood. "A vote. The creature known as Dante remains on this station under scientific observation and continued socialization protocols. Environmental modifications continue. Mitchell maintains primary contact. All in favor?" Hands and appendages and tentacles rose. "Not everyone." Rourke kept his arms folded. "But enough. More than enough." "Motion carries," Brooks said. He looked exhausted. "God help us if this goes wrong." "It won't," Jake said, surprised by his own certainty. "Dante's not going to hurt anyone. Not now. Not ever again." Rourke approached Jake as the council dispersed. Up close, the commander was even more intimidating. Scars crossed his face. His eyes held memories of 1,000 battles. "You have faith in this creature," he said. "I have experience being that creature," Jake replied. Rourke was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Jake didn't expect. He bowed his head slightly. "Not submission. Respect. My warriors died fighting. Perhaps they died because fighting was all they knew. You have taught us a different way. I do not know if it is a better way. but it is a way I had not considered. 3 months passed. Bay 7 was completely transformed. Still secure, but comfortable now. Softer lighting. Sound dampening panels. Gravity generators creating a field closer to whatever Dante called home. The pain hadn't disappeared completely, but Dante's translations came easier now, more complex, more nuanced. Jake still brought lunch every day. But now others joined sometimes. Dr. Shaw, asking questions about dimensional physics. A Coronid child, curious and fearless. Even some of Rourke's warriors, standing quiet watch, learning to see something other than an enemy. Jake didn't go back to engineering. The offers came, surprisingly. Dr. Shaw suggested he work with the xenobiology team. Brooks offered him a position in first contact protocols. But Jake kept his mop. Kept his routine. Because Dante still needed him. And honestly, he still needed Dante. They sat together in the modified bay, human and dimensional refugee, sharing a sandwich and comfortable silence. On the screens, Dante's words scrolled past. Jake. Asks. Why? Stay. Janitor. Could. Be. More. Jake smiled. I am more. I'm your friend. That's enough. Dante. Understands. Dante. Was. Nothing. Now. Dante. Is. Friend. This. Is. Everything. Yeah, Jake said softly. Everything. Outside the bay, the station continued its daily rhythm. Thousands of people going about their lives. Most still didn't notice Jake Mitchell pushing his mop through corridors. And that was okay. Because one being saw him. Really saw him. And sometimes, being seen by one is worth more than being noticed by thousands. Sometimes broken builds bridges instead of walls. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer bread to something everyone else fears. Sometimes that changes everything.